What's going on, people? What's going on? Look, man, I'm gonna ask y'all a question. Um, how many of y'all know that if you wait until everything lines up perfectly for you to get started on something, you'll never start, right? So you see my little backdrop here, man. Obviously, I'm in my bedroom. I got my Saints stuff. I got my LSU cap on the other side. Then, of course, you see in the back, I got Reggie Bush, jersey framed, and I got Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant poster. So obviously I love sports. I'm from Louisiana, so that's why I'm a Saints fan and LSU fan. Um, well, my name is Herschel Robinson. You can find me on Instagram at HersheyR47. That's my Instagram handle. It's spelled just like the candy, HERSHEY, the letter R47. Um, so again, my name is Herschel. I'm a former Division I athlete. I played football at University of Louisiana, and played sports my whole life, man. Like I played growing up. I played basketball. I started playing organized basketball at 7, and I played all the way through my senior in high school. And then baseball, I played from 8 years old all the way through my senior in high school as well. I got started later in football. That was my most natural sport and the one I was best at. But I got started, later. I played in junior high, and then in my 8th grade year, and then I didn't play again until my last 2 years in high school, and then I played in college. Um, but yeah, so I just kind of want to give some background history on myself and why I'm doing this podcast. So this is the first episode of Sports We Watchin Livin Talkin. All right, so it's a lot of stuff going on in the sports world right now that I want to touch on, man, and just kind of give some of my opinions on. The first one I want to talk about is basketball. Let's focus on the NBA. You see that there was a 4-team trade with James Harden and going to the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets. So they develop a super team now. So you had some important pieces go other places like Karis LeVert went to the Pacers. You have Victor Oladipo ended up with the Rockets. And to be honest with you, I don't know if that's going to be his final landing spot. There's talk that he really want to play for Miami, so he still may end up getting traded. Excuse me again. And then you have Jared Allen going to the Cavs. They got quite a few big men now, so they probably not done trading. I don't like the fact that the Nets lost some key pieces like Jared Allen, Karis LeVert. Some key role players, guys that logged some key minutes and supporting cast right now that really seem really top heavy. Um, but what I would say is like I wouldn't be surprised to see Kyrie Irving move to the 2, play the 2 predominantly, and James Harden run the point. And I know most people are assuming that Kyrie Irving's shot attempts are going to be less than James Harden. I wouldn't be surprised, man, when they're all three on the court that actually James Harden takes the least amount of shots and he plays more of a point guard role, kind of similar to what he used to do at OKC with Russell Westbrook. I know that for years all we've seen is James Harden is dribble, 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 dribble. But in some ways, he kind of had to do that in Houston. And they kind of built the offense around, his ability to ISO. So time will tell. We'll see how everything works out for them. I know most people feel like, man, it's championship or bust. But they got to get to the point where they can gel together and figure this thing out. On paper, they look great. Um, Now, in terms of like some of the hows, how did we get to this point? Well, the reason why we got here, man, is because James Harden has wanted out of Houston. Um, you know, Throughout the off season, I mean, it started training camp. Man, the dude was missing training camp because he's partying in Atlanta and Vegas. Then he come back to Houston, same thing, strip clubs, whole nine, man, and So he's missing training camp. When he comes back, he's out of shape. They even had to postpone the season opener. And then you have, him talking about the team is trash, they're not good enough, and the media interviews, all these types of things where he's just throwing shade and on even on other teammates. And the thing about it is, man, is your actions don't just impact you; they impact other people. And for my money, man, like he's what he was doing was definitely impacting the Rockets. The Rockets, the other players, and it's unfair to them. But we live in a day and age, man. Like these players, when they want to go to another team, they'll do everything in their power, whether it's not show up or whatever it is, to force their way out. We seen it with Anthony Davis. You know what I mean? We seen this with who else we seen this with? I know it was Anthony Davis, obviously James Harden. Um, I can't think of anybody else right now. But we've seen when guys, man, they burn their bridges on the way out. One thing I was taught, man, my mom always taught me is that don't burn your bridges because you never know who you may need down the road. And clearly, these guys don't navigate that way. Um, and that's unfortunate, but that's where we are with it. A part of me kind of feels like I wish that it wouldn't. I kind of felt like it just from the standpoint of looking at these athletes are role models, or whether they like it or not. A lot of these kids look up to these guys, man, and I think it's setting a bad example and precedent for when things don't go your way or when you want to get your way, how you go about doing so, and then you'll throw a fit if you don't get it. Um, to me, that's bad, a bad example to set. But that's the reality of what these guys are doing, and they're not really worried about the example they set. And then just sticking with the Nets, talking about Kyrie Irving, man, this guy has been absent um, from the team without an example, without a you know without an explanation. And you got people, getting asked about this, and they can't give a straight answer. His head coach, the GM, you know, there's talk that, of course, the video came out where he was dancing, with his sister for her birthday, and then we seen where he was on a Zoom call during the game. There's rumors that part of the reason why he's withheld his services and just left out of frustration to what happened at the Capitol, the riots and stuff that happened. So the thing about with Kyrie is he's so volatile, that you really can't be surprised that he's done something like this before. We've seen when he was in Boston when he just mysteriously, was MIA. We've seen when he was, I can't remember if it was before he got traded from Cleveland or right afterwards. And he pretty much made it known, that, man, he could up and retire, at any moment. And then through the course of um, the pandemic and this previous season in the bubble, he's all in on, saying, man, I feel like we shouldn't play because of social injustice issues and things. How can we play basketball right now? And threatening to retire, all these types of things. So, to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure Houston wishes they could have, like, Kevin Durant would have signed off on them trading Kyrie for James Harden and keeping the rest of their pieces. But they're so concerned with Kevin Durant. What does Kevin Durant want? Because they want to ensure Kevin Durant stays with their team. They're viewing him as their top franchise caliber player moving forward. And so they've made those moves based on trying to keep him happy and make sure he re-ups with them. So, that's kind of my take on the whole thing. I kind of feel like they would have been better off if they could just have been able to trade Kyrie for James Harden. But we'll see how it plays out. You know what I'm saying? So there's been some other interesting things that's been going on in the NBA. Lamelo Ball's been balling, man. I can remember when he was in high school after Lonzo left for UCLA. And man, there was some some big time matchups that he had against some really good competition where he really didn't look too good, man. Like he looked like he really wasn't taking it seriously. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine, man, and we were talking about how people talk trash about LeVar Ball for taking him out of high school. And you can make a case that, hey, man, it wasn't good for him from the standpoint of he'll never get those years back and experience in high school. But on the flip side of it, for him, because of where he was at the time mentally and not really taking it seriously, I kind of felt like it benefited him. Like he wouldn't be the player he is right now without playing against grown men. His dad put him in this Yugoslavia league where he played. He had a little small stint in this Yugoslavia league. It was a lower end league, but it was still against grown men. Um, and his brother Leangelo played with him as well. And you got to see people that are playing for their livelihoods. You know what I'm saying? They trying to eat, man. And then he ended up playing in Australia. I know he also played at the prep school, where you can play even after high school, and technically your high school eligibility isn't up. It's almost like having an additional year. But I think one of the best experiences he had was the season he played in the Australia League, and it was a pretty competitive league. I think it might have been the best league in Australia that he was in. And I think playing against grown men who are playing for their livelihoods, to take care of their families, and really taking this thing seriously and playing this higher competition, I think it positioned him to be where he is right now. And when you see him right now, in my opinion, when I watch him play, even before his minutes started to increase, to me, when you look at him, the potential, the writing's on the wall where this kid, man, can be a superstar in this league, in my opinion. And I think, depending upon how many minutes he can log this year, it's possible he might be able to make the All-Star team this season. But if he doesn't make it this season, I think he'll definitely make it next season. Assuming he doesn't have an injury, that keeps him out. I really believe that, man. This kid, Michael Jordan, might have finally got his All-Star player, franchise player. I mean, assuming he can keep him there, he might have finally found his guy. And pairing him, Gordon Hayward's been balling, man, So, it's good to see, man, this kid doing well. And he's had the benefit of not having so much of the hype to live up to that Lonzo did. And then he's in a smaller market. So, I think that helps out well with his transition. But I think that kid's special, man. So, so I kind of want to, switch gears here, because I've spent a lot of time talking about basketball. I want to get into football, something that I feel like I'm a little more, football is my favorite sport. I'll say that, So there's a lot of stuff going in the NFL. You've got this period where you got the playoffs going on. These franchises that fired their head coaches, they're going through the hiring process for head coaches, GMs, and so there's a few teams that's already hired their new head coach. Jacksonville hired Urban Meyer, and the Giants hired Mo Salah, from the defense coordinator from the 49ers. So I stick, with the Jets. It's really hard to tell whether or not this is a good hire or not, because to me it still comes back to all the way from the top. Do they provide the right structure for this head coach to succeed? Still going to come down to drafting, their ability to put some good players there, and then development. So we'll see how that goes. I have a little bit more confidence in the Urban Meyer hire, and I would imagine for him to take that job, he's probably given a lot more control. I know people are typically apprehensive for coaches taking a leap to the NFL, but I think now is a good time for multiple reasons. One, there's a lot more college concepts that have been brought to the NFL. The rules are more conducive to to success, running spread offenses or a lot of spread concepts and RPOs in the NFL than what they used to be. And so I think I believe Urban Meyer would do pretty good, and not to mention he has a number one draft pick. He's been on record stating, you know, believing that Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback of all time in college football. Um, and so, he likes Justin Fields too. Those are the top two for him. So, we'll see which one he goes with. I mean, obviously, if you look at the offenses that he ran in college, your first thought process would be like, man, Justin Fields would fit it the best. Um, but we don't really know if he's going to run that same offense or not. And even if he does, there's still going to be additional things that you probably didn't see in the college game. Every coach has a playbook, but they don't necessarily, they may not necessarily use the whole thing, especially in college. These are student athletes. So, and then throughout the course of each week, there might be things they implement just for that week. So, his playbook is probably larger than what people would think or seem, assuming he's going to be using his. So, I haven't seen, the coaching hires, the OCs and everything that he's hired. I read something to where he was, I think Charlie Strong was going to be joining him on the staff. So I would assume Charlie Strong is going to be his defensive coordinator. At minimum, he'll probably coach the secondary linebackers, but I would think Charlie Strong would probably be his defensive coordinator. So the Jags have a lot of salary cap space. I think they have 2 first-round picks, including the number 1 pick overall. So, I think there's some potential for them to build, but the organization is going to have to be patient, because right now, obviously, Tennessee is the class of that division. We'll see what happens at a quarterback position for the Colts. They've got a really good roster, but we don't know whether or not Phillip Rivers is going to come back or what they're going to do with the quarterback position. So, but anyway, I would say so far my favorite hire would be the Urban Meyer. Now, there's some other things we've seen going on that's crazy. I mean, the Eagles, they fired Doug Peterson. In my opinion, I thought that was a mistake. This man won the championship 3 years ago. And the quarterback he won it with is not even on the roster. And so, we've heard a lot of rumors about Carson Wentz being, changing the plays or not buying in or, running his own stuff. What I would say about Carson Wentz when I watch him is I know the team is trash. There's been a lot of injuries. But to me, Carson Wentz, when you watch him, it's like he's playing YOLO ball. And what I mean by that is on plays when there's clearly guys in the flat that's open, or maybe there's a guy that's running it in or out or something that, is a check down. Maybe it's your third read. He's passed up on that so many times just to throw it deep, throw it in double coverage, for guys that aren't even open. To me, I think one of the biggest reasons why he didn't play well is because he's not seeing the field, you know, and he's trying to score on almost every play. And regardless if you get another coach in here, he's still gonna fail if he goes about football that same way. So that would be one of the biggest reasons why I think that he struggled. I don't know bringing in a new coach if it's gonna rebuild him or not. It sounds like his attitude is one of the biggest issues. It's up here. It's not a physical issue. It's a mental issue. Whether it's his ability to get his teammates to rally around him, whether they like him or view him, as a good leader or a guy they can win with. It doesn't seem like that's the case. So, they may have to blow it all up, man, get some new blood. But it's clear that they've chosen the quarterback over the coach. So we'll see how it plays out. I kind of feel like they're going to regret it after the season. My opinion, I think they regret it. It's hard to find some really good coaches. They had one. I think they made a mistake. But Doug Peterson will probably get another opportunity with somebody. And we'll see how that plays out, with him. So, Another franchise I think that it's got a lot of negative energy or things that's going on is in Houston, Texas, man. Deshaun Watson looks like he wants out of here, which rightfully so. I think they've made bad decision after bad decision, in the course of years. And what you see right now is a product of bad decision making over a long period of time. A lot of people, um, it's easy to see when a team is, that they need to move forward and get rid of a coach when they're struggling. It's hard to see when they're actually winning enough. They're still winning. They're still going in the playoffs, barely making it in the playoffs or whatever. Regardless of how it looks, to be able to see, okay, maybe we need to move on from this guy. But over the course of the years that Bill O'Brien has been the head coach, man, they've traded away good players and not signed good players like Tyrann Mathieu. They let Jadeveon Clowney go, which I think he was a good addition to the defense overall that helped them provide good pass rush and stopping the run. And he's actually better against the run than he is in creating pressure. I think that was a bad decision. Obviously, trading away DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson was horrible. David Johnson has been washed for a few years. I don't know if it's because, he hit the weights too hard and he got too stiff, but he doesn't have that same explosion that he had with the Cardinals when he had that breakout season, I think about 3 or 4 years ago. He don't have the same explosion, man. And so, this season they played without a running game. Their running game was one of the worst in the league. Deshaun Watson had one of his best seasons, man. He threw for over 4,800 yards. He threw for 33 touchdowns. He only had 7 interceptions. He fumbled the ball 4 times, but only lost of them one. So he was only responsible for 8 turnovers. And he threw for over 70%. He had a 70% completion percentage, which I think is as high as this in his career. And he averaged 8.9 yards per attempt. You know what I'm saying? So, it wasn't like he was just checking it down. And that's even with Bill O'Brien starting the season as an OC, when he wasn't really, allowing for the offense to really flourish and throw the ball downfield and be more aggressive. So imagine if he had been doing that the whole year. He would have thrown, in my opinion, he would have thrown for over 5,000 yards. No doubt about that. He probably would have had close to 40 touchdowns. So I think, Deshaun Watson is a generational talent. Just to back up my point of how good of a season he's had, there's only been 3 other quarterbacks that have had a statistical season this good, in terms of with the 8.5 yards per completion per attempt, 70% completion percentage, and all 3 of those guys won the Super Bowl that won the Super Bowl that year. Joe Montana, Steve Young, and Drew Brees. Deshaun Watson's team was 4-12. So that's not on him, man. The defense was historically bad. The NFL, they've been measuring defensive efficiency since 2006. And there's, over the course of that time, there's quote-unquote 480 different defenses, right? 480 different defenses of data that you're collecting, and you're ranking them from 1 to 480. Well, the Texans defense this year was 478th. The biggest problem they had was stopping the run. I mean, they couldn't stop the pass either, but man, everybody ran the ball on them. Everybody was logging, 100 yards. And their defense, the pass defense was okay to start off the season, but by time they got to week 3 or 4, I mean, they were just getting shredded just as bad as the run defense. So, to me, they got to do a lot of rebuilding, but the first start is to convince Deshaun to stay. Apparently there's been a breach of trust, not just from them, the decisions they've made personnel-wise and the team getting worse off. But also too that apparently they've went to Deshaun and told him like, hey man, we want to involve you in the process, hiring process and stuff, and they didn't honor that. Now the way I look at it is they don't really owe him to ask him for his input, but if you're not gonna use someone's input, don't tell them, say, hey man, we want to use your input. You know what I'm saying? Because then now you're lying to them, and then what that does is even breaches the trust even more. You know what I'm saying? So, for my opinion, they should have never went to him if they never intended to do that and follow through. And Deshaun's been on record. Like man, he really is interested in Eric Bieniemy, the OC for the Chiefs. And I think, man, if they were to hire somebody like Eric Bieniemy and install that offense with the receivers they have, they could probably use to add another piece at receiver. I do think they need to upgrade their running back position and some key spots on the O line. But I think Deshaun Watson can put up numbers just as big as Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people may disagree with me from that, but I think Deshaun has shown, man, like, he may not have the arm strength, you know what I'm saying, that Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's every bit as accurate. And I think, to be honest with you, I think Deshaun is one of them quarterbacks, man. If you give him what he needs, man, like he can put up against the best of teams, best of defenses. He's really that lethal. I mean, he did it with the Colts this year, man. And I think he balled out even without Will Fuller. He had a great game. So I think the reality of it is that we'll see what happens. Deshaun has a no trade clause. It's kind of weird, right? So like he can get traded, but he has to sign off on the landing spot. So it's going to be interesting to see, if he's going to really enforce that in the offseason after he's had time to really think about it, or what, you know what I mean, and what they follow through. I'm pretty sure they're going to require a house for him. But there's numerous teams that, if I were them, I'd kick the tires, man. Straight up on that. Like, like straight up. Like, if I'm the Saints, assuming this is Drew Brees' last year, I'll say, man, what do y'all want for Deshaun? What do y'all want? You know what I mean? There's other teams. There's a lot of teams, bro. Like, honestly, there's more teams than not teams that probably should look at him. If you're not a team that has Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, obviously Cincinnati just drafted their franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow. But, I mean, I would say about 85% of the league probably needs to kick the tires on it. So, we'll see how that plays out, man. But, I really believe, Deshaun. Hopefully, Deshaun gets put in position to really flourish and show how good he really is. Because I think this kid or young man, can win multiple Super Bowls. And just to kind of illustrate how highly I think of Deshaun Watson, he's in my top 5, man. Like, in terms of quarterbacks right now, not over the course of their whole career or what they've done over the past, but I think right now, for me, he's top 5. I would say number 1 is still Aaron Rodgers. Patrick Mahomes is number 2. Deshaun Watson is number 3 for me. Russell Wilson is 4, and Josh Allen is 5. Now I started the season with Russell Wilson as number 2 behind Rodgers, but considering his play has kind of tapered off towards the tail end of the season, even though his team made the playoffs, to me, I thought that Deshaun was more consistent throughout the whole year, even though it didn't turn into results. But, I think, if my opinion this year, I think Russell Wilson had a little bit better supporting cast. His receivers, I think, overall better. The defense started to pick it up halfway through the year when they They added some pieces to the defense. I think they had added Carlos Dunlap. They got Jamal Adams off of injury. So their defense started to come alive a little bit, and they got a pretty good running game with Chris Carson. So that's part of my reason from that. And Josh Allen, to me, the way he's played this year, I mean, he's improved each year. The Bills made the playoffs last year, and then this year they've advanced in the playoffs as the number 2 seed. Um, and when I watch Josh Allen play, man, like he's doing a lot of things that Patrick Mahomes does from a physical standpoint. He's got every bit the same arm talent in terms of arm strength and velocity. He may throw it harder, but he's showed touch. He's been a lot more accurate. A lot of that, from all extensive purposes, seems to be the work he's put in the off season. With his footwork, because you do throw with your feet. Your feet work is very important. But one of the biggest reasons is they added Stephon Diggs. So they got a legit number 1 receiver. Then they got another field stretcher in John Brown. You got Cole Beasley underneath. To me, the only weakness on offense is they don't really have an established running game with their running backs. Josh Allen is probably their best runner, or provides the most rushing yards, which is not a good thing. But one of the things that's helped them of late is their defense got Matt Milano back. So in the middle of defense, and so he's really key, and not just stopping the run, but also their pass defense on defending, those tight ends and stuff, where they were getting beat, for a better part of the year. And then overall, it's helped their defense, man. Their defense has picked it up over the past, I don't know, maybe 6-7 weeks since he's come back from his injury. So, so I mean, I like Josh Allen at 5. My list could change, in the future, but that's what I would have right now. I know me having Patrick Mahomes at number 2, not number 1, is controversial, but part of the reason why I do that is so the Packers have the number 1 offense, and in my opinion, I don't think their personnel is offensively is on the perimeter is close to the Chiefs. The Chiefs have Travis Kelce, arguably the best tight end in the league, or at least best receiving tight end. And then they have Tyreek Hill, probably top 2 fastest receiver in the league. You have Sammy Watkins, who he's injured right now, but he's a former first-round draft pick. He's got 4.4 speed. He's put up, some 1,000-yard seasons in his career. And then you got some other pieces at receiver and then the running back. They got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They added Le'Veon Bell, which I don't think Le'Veon is what he used to be. But, to me, you compare that with the Packers, they're only, to me, on the only speed on the perimeter is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and he can't catch. So Devontae Adams is their best receiver, but Devontae is a little bit more of a possession receiver. He's a great route runner. He's good at getting off of jams. He's really strong. He's smart. He's good at changing speeds and changing direction. And so that's part of the reason why he wins a lot. Then they move him around a lot. They got Alan Lazard on the other side, but he's not a burner either. Aaron Jones is probably faster than both of them, and he's their running back. So he's a good running back. And I think Rodgers has been carrying that offense for years, man. I mean, the last 2 seasons weren't as good for different reasons. Last year was a new offense with Matt LaFleur. And in the previous season, they were on their last leg with what is his name? McCarthy. McCarthy, the offense was stale, man. So I think those are issues with that. And the Packers have neglected to draft and add additional weaponry on the outside. So I think Rodgers. The other thing to further illustrate my point about Rodgers, from my opinion, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody consistently as accurate as him year to year. The guy throws in some tight windows, man, and especially Devontae Adams, and puts it on the money, man. And where and whether he's on the run, he's off balance, throwing off his back foot, whatever it is. There's so many arm angles he can throw. Um, but the guy, man, he's only had 2 seasons where he's thrown for um, more than 9 interceptions in 2008 and 2010. In 2008, I think he threw 13, and in 10 it was either in 2010 it was either 10 or 11 interceptions, one of the two. But outside of that, as much as he throws a football, man, he's usually single digits in interceptions and flirting around 30 to 40, touchdowns a season, and he habitually is throwing for over 4,000 yards. He's leading the league in touchdowns this year. I forget how many he's throwing. I know it's over 40, but he's leading the league in touchdowns, and he's primed to win MVP. I think he's only really had one really horrific game this year, and that was against Tampa Bay. They had his number, man. So, um, outside of that, I don't really think that he's had like really, really bad games this season. Now, in terms of the matchup they got this week, it's a bad matchup for him, man, going against the Rams, and he lost his left tackle and Bakhtiari. Um, what I see what the Packers are going to do in this game, it's going to be a lot of short passes. He's not going to really have time to throw it deep. That game plan is going to be a lot of short stuff, probably similar to when they played Chicago or any other really good defense where he didn't have a lot of passing yards. Um, I wouldn't be. I know everybody's building up this matchup of Devontae Adams versus Jalen Ramsey, but I would be surprised if they move him away from Ramsey and line him up in the slot most of the time to try to get some good matchups. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Jones is used in the passing game a little bit more in this game to try to create matchups against the linebackers. They might use Robert Tonyan a little bit too, but I think that's how you exploit them. You can't go man for man on the outside. You just don't have. To me, they don't have the ability to separate from those corners, and then he's probably not going to have the time for those 7-step drops to develop. So and then on the flip side of it for the Rams, I think you pound that rock with Akers. You know, um, the tough part about picking this game is because Jared Goff. I don't know how good Jared Goff is going to be. Um, you know, so it's really tough to really pick this game. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna say some kind of way the Packers figure out a way to beat them at home. The Rams are traveling on the road. The LA team, all they've been doing is practicing in that LA weather. Jared Goff had surgery recently on his thumb, on his throwing hand. He's got a pin in it. And I think that's going to impact him. As much as they run the ball and stuff, at some point they're going to have to throw it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bay stacks the box and say, hey, Jared Goff, you're going to have to beat us. And I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to do that. So they probably run a lot of two tight end sets. I doubt the Rams are going to, get into any 11 personnel, which is one running back, one tight end, or get into 10 personnel, which is just one running back and 4 receivers, or get into, anything like that. I don't think they're going to be in those 3 receiver sets, man, or more. I think it's going to be a lot of 12 personnel to try to ground and pound that rock. And, he'll probably try to get the tight ends involved and the slot receiver, because just J.R. Alexander's a shutdown corner. Jair Alexander is his name. He's a shutdown corner, man. Like, he's been playing ball. He's probably top 2 or 3 corner this year. I don't know that there's been a number 1 receiver that's put up numbers on him all year long. Nobody's put up 100 yards on him. So I'm gonna pick the Green Bay Packers. They've had 2 weeks to prepare, and I'm gonna trust that they can get enough stops on defense. They might even create some turnovers. They got a good pass rush, and they'll end up winning that home field advantage with the weather and the conditions and things, I'm gonna pick the Packers to win that game. The other matchup I want to talk about is the Chiefs and the Browns. So I think that's going to be a close game. I'm going to go with the Chiefs, but I kind of feel like what's probably going to happen is the Browns are going to start off, uh, looking pretty good, running the ball well. Um, the Chiefs will probably have to make some adjustments, and once they get that one or two stops, then it's going to be blitzkrieg. They're gonna come out on them boys real hard. So for the Browns, honestly, the best thing they can do is win the toss and choose to receive and pound that rock. If I could avoid throwing the ball more than 17, 20 times, 15, I would do so. I don't think the Chiefs will be able to stop their running game consistently, but if the Browns don't score every drive, man, it's going to position with the Chiefs are going to put up points, and the Browns are going to probably have to go away from that running game. So they're going to have to score every drive. I do think the game is going to be fairly close, at least to start off. But the Browns, man, their biggest weakness is the Chiefs' biggest strength, and that's pass defense. They're getting Ward back and another corner, I think Johnson back, but I don't think that's enough, man. Their defense may try to. Uh, I think you got to play zone and try to back up and force them to just check it down and hit those gaps in the defense. When in games like that, you see Travis Kelce get a lot of catches. Um, but the thing about it is, man, they've shown that they can beat you that way. If you want them to beat you by death by a thousand cuts, they can do so. I think they've shown some patience to be able to do that. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm gonna go with the Chiefs. I'm gonna say the Chiefs are gonna win. Um, we'll see what happens, but I think the Chiefs are probably gonna win. Um, I do think the Browns it's a good matchup for them considering the Chiefs defense, but I'm gonna go with the Chiefs, especially considering they're coming off of a bye. If they weren't coming off a bye, I would actually pick the Browns to upset the Chiefs. But I can't go against Andy Reid having 2 weeks to prepare, and figure out how to beat a defense and jump out on them. So that's gonna be a good. I do think it's gonna be an entertaining game, but that's my take on that. In terms of the playoffs, there's some good other matchups, man. I mean, we got the Ravens and the Bills. The Bills, I think it's supposed to snow Saturday night, so you think that okay, that plays into the Ravens style of football the most. I don't think Lamar has played in the snow before. If he's done it, it's only been once. So it's a little bit different, man, and it's something like that. And it's supposed to, I think it's snow up to have up to 3 inches Saturday night, and that's when the game is. So it's not going to be one of them situations where they put tarp over the field and then they keep the snow off or something like that, or remove the snow with the trucks pre-game. That's something they're going to be playing in. It's going to be interesting to see how it impacts the game plan. If the snow is not deep, I think you could have a high scoring game. But if it's deep and it's impacting players' ability to cut sharply, like your receivers or your running backs. I mean, I could see this game being really ugly and just kind of hard to watch. So I think the Bills had a game like that earlier this year against the Chiefs, where it was snowing, and those teams, I mean, they didn't really put up many points. You would have expected it to be a high scoring game, but it wasn't. So the issue, I think the Ravens defense has been coming along. They've gotten healthy on the D line. As good as their secondary is, they have been exploited at times. It's going to be interesting to see their really aggressive defense. They run a lot of man. Um, but, to me, Josh Allen has all his weapons now, and assuming that the snow is not deep, and it's not 3 or more inches, and where they gotta possibly change their cleats and all that stuff. I would say that Josh Allen and the Bills are gonna win. But if we got like a ugly game where the snow is impacting things, I would go with the Ravens just because they have a running game with both the quarterback and the running backs. I do think they're a really good defense, but Josh Allen has shown he has all his weapons this year, regardless of the defense. Man, he's still carving people up. So um, for me, it's all about the weather and the game plan. But I'm gonna go with the Bills because I picked the Bills to go to the Super Bowl over the Chiefs. Just as an upset. And I actually have the Packers and the Bills meeting up in the Super Bowl. You got new school versus old school, Rodgers versus Allen. So we'll see how it plays out. Guys, this has been my first episode of Sports We Watchin Livin Talkin. You've been sitting with Herschel Robinson, aka HersheyR47. Check me out on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. Again, it's spelled HersheyR47. And make sure you subscribe to my channel, man. You know what I'm saying? Subscribe to my channel. Add some comments, whether it's suggestions on, what I can do to be better, what you like, dislike, and even if it's just to, submit some encouragement. There's nothing wrong with, putting some positive energy out there, man, because you'll get that in return. So much love, people. I love y'all. Until next time. Peace.